Nazreen Baji shut the phone and sighed. She was sitting in the sunken living room next to Jawad Sahib as I handed her a cup of chai. The television was on low in the background. What's the matter? Jawad Sahib asked. Ziba canceled our shopping trip to Lahore again. You probably don't want to go anyway, he said. Traffic is terrible these days. I need a new sari for your cousin's wedding, and I'm 2 seasons behind with all my clothes. But ever since Ziba's grandchild was born, she has no time. Go yourself then. It's lonely traveling to the city alone. Come with me. She reached out and patted his hand. We haven't done anything together in so long. You know how much work I have. She frowned. Then she looked at me. That's it. Amal, you're coming with me, Nazreen said. Me? It's a long drive, 2 hours if the traffic cooperates. Pack some dried snacks, water, and a thermos with chai. Would Jawad Sahib interject? Tell her I couldn't leave the estate? He clicked on his phone and said nothing. Going to Lahore? Nabila asked me when I walked into the kitchen. Yes, I need to get her snacks and tea in order, I said cautiously. Did she wish she was going instead of me? We'd gotten along fine in the months since our truce, but I couldn't completely forget her treachery. The bags get really heavy, she said. By the end, my arms usually feel like they'll fall off. Make sure to put the bags down every chance you get. Thanks for the tip, I said, and she smiled at me. Sitting across from Nazreen Baji in the black town car that afternoon, we drove past cotton fields, orange groves, and sugarcane fields. Soon, my neighborhood snapped into view. As we turned down the main street, the same one whose path I'd traveled nearly every week, we passed by the open-air market. Shakat stood outside, talking to a kulfi vendor. I pressed my fingers against the darkened glass, watching the market slide past me, out of sight. Was that Shakat? Nazreen Baji asked. Yes, I said. For a second, I thought it was his father. Things looked quiet there. It's not delivery day. On Tuesdays and Fridays, you can't find a spot to stand. 2 shipments a week? That's impressive. They've added more space in the back. You can't see it from the road. I forget how it is in our villages. Only those who live there know exactly what is going on. We drove past my street, and then for a brief moment, my house flitted in and out of view. It looked smaller somehow. I wondered if all my memories of home would grow as distant as Nazreen Baji's had. Watching my village slip away in the rear view, I felt like I was losing a piece of myself. I thought I knew what Lahore would be like, but it was one thing to read about it in a book or see it on television, and another to experience it for myself. Unlike the steady stream of the highway, here rickshaws, motorcycles, trucks, and cars shared the narrow roads alongside bicycles and throngs of people. Stores pressed against other stores on either side of us, large signs in Urdu and in English towering on billboards overhead. Suddenly, the car jerked to a stop. We can't be there yet, can we? Nazreen Baji asked Gullum. Almost. It's another one of those protests blocking traffic. What's this one about? She leaned against the car seat and sighed. Judge Barcy, he said as the car snaked slowly through the snarl of traffic. That's what the signs say, anyhow. I looked out the window. The sidewalk and streets up ahead were filled with people holding signs. Some had photos of the judge with angry red X's splashed across his face. A woman in a red hijab stood on the crate. She picked up a horn and shouted, Jail Judge Barcy! The crowd chanted along with her, and their voices made the car vibrate. So a judge does something they don't like, and we pay the price for sitting in traffic? Nazreen Baji complained. I swear, every week they find something new to get angry about. I'd seen protests on the news, but seeing it in person, I felt the energy in the air. Even through the closed, darkened window, it crackled through me. At last, we reached the bazaar. I hopped out of the car and trailed behind Nazreen Baji through the arched entrance into the Anarkali Bazaar. The smell of samosas and pakoras filled the air. In my old village, there was one stall for all the snack foods. Here, stall after stall was lined up as far as I could see. Men shouted their prices over one another, and their voices echoed through the bazaar. We passed 4 different spice stores, each with turmeric and chilies lining the shelves, and spices and colors with names I had never seen before. Streams of people brushed past us, and with the loud bargaining, the laughter, the arguing, and the honking of the cars in the distance, everything felt like it was merging into one beating pulse. And the people. Some girls were dressed like me in plain shalwar kameezes. Other girls wore pants and blouses. I saw some fully covered with nothing but their eyes revealed, while others wore short-sleeved shirts. All this time, I wanted to travel to faraway cities, but here, just a few hours away, was Lahore, another planet. We passed a shoe store, a handbag store, and a shop where rows and rows of bangles lined the walls. I wanted to take a moment and absorb everything, but I had to keep up with Nazreen Baji as she hurried toward the sari shop. Stepping inside, I stood against the back wall. Nazreen Baji sat down on a red cushioned pillow and pointed to the rows of fabric lining the walls. The shopkeepers pulled off the bolts of silk and unfurled them across the floor in front of her. Soon, the floor was a sea of green, sky blue, and petal pink. It would take hours for them to put everything back in place, but the men didn't seem to care. Nazreen Baji sifted through the different saris and picked 3. I had never seen anyone shop with the freedom of Nazreen Baji. After the sari shop, she walked into the store after store and simply pointed to what she liked. Gold earrings, silver-heeled shoes, ruby-encrusted bangles, and just like that, they became hers. The sun was beginning to set when they got into the car. Nabila was right about the heavy bags. My arms strained from the weight of them. The sky flushed pink, then deepened into purple as we drove. It was fully set when we passed our villages. I looked at my school under the glow of the moon. Hafsa's house. My own. You didn't tell me Shabnam is getting married, Nazreen Baji said. Shabnam, I repeated. That was Hafsa's oldest sister. Shakat's daughter, this weekend, borrowed some money for her dowry, even though it'll still be a modest one given their financial circumstances. Your family never mentioned it? I don't have a phone, I told her. Everyone has a phone. Why didn't you bring one? Jawad Sahib took mine when I first arrived. You mean to tell me you haven't spoken to your family since you came? I shook my head. Your poor mother, she must be so worried. Her eyes widened. That settled it. Settles it. She deserves to see for herself that you're all right. You can have 3 days, attend the festivities, and spend some time with your family. Would Jawad Sahib let me? Why wouldn't he? She asked. You have time off. It's entitled to you. I've lived at their estate long enough, but there was still so much I didn't understand. But those thoughts were quickly replaced by thoughts of home. How badly did I miss the familiar curve of my bed, my mother's food, Seema, my little sisters, my friends. I knew I should thank Nazreen Baji, tell her how much this meant to me. But how could I possibly express my gratitude? Words failed. I could go home. However briefly, I was going home. Yeah. So how does Nazreen Baji feel about Jawad Sahib's decision to take away her phone? So what does that tell you about Nazreen Baji? She's a good person. Is she completely or mostly clueless about how her son is?
Yes.
Yeah. It's like she has no idea. I mean, she does have some idea because she's had to tell him, please don't treat them like that, right? Like she's had to stop him from treating the servants poorly.
You probably wouldn't have servants anymore. They'd all be dead if she didn't.
Yeah. So Nazreen Baji is she's a nice person, but she's choosing to ignore this terrible trait in her son. And a lot because her husband probably shares a lot of the same traits. Because they said, well, we thought it was bad we thought it was bad under his father, but now Jawad Sahib, Jawad is even worse, according to the people of the village. So, Amal gets to go home. How do you think Amal felt driving past her house and not being able to stop? Sad? Like feeling like that wasn't her house anymore?